Hello. So, there's a letter. There exists a letter. That's been causing quite a stir within the Rooster Teeth RWBY community recently, for the past few weeks. It's and link is in the description below. Basically, this guy called Shane Newville, who I didn't even know existed, was apparently very closely tied to Monty. He was apparently Monty's right-hand man, or so he says. He was like the next... He was an animator for RWBY. He was very important, at least supposedly, within the production process. And in the letter, he basically describes, one part his life story and one part the production process of RWBY, how he met Monty, how they got to work in RWBY, and what ended up happening within the production of RWBY, the BTS politics that were going on during the making of Volume 3, leading up to Shane getting fired and divorcing his wife, and a whole lot of really bad stuff happened to the guy. I don't know how much of it is true. I can't know. Some of it definitely feels very true. A lot of the stuff in the letter feels very true. Just the way he describes certain things feels very authentic. Like there's no way somebody made that up. I might bring some of these things up, but pretty much he was decrying Rooster Teeth for what they were doing with RWBY Volume 3, which is a happy coincidence, I suppose. But not necessarily a happy coincidence, because that's what I was doing for the past few months. And this whole situation screams... I hate to say I was right, pretty much, but... So, basically, this letter has divided the community, from what I hear. People are very upset. You either have Team Shane or Team Rooster Teeth. And for the record, I am not on Team Rooster Teeth. I never was. I am on, Team Principles, pretty much. Shane's letter is heartbreaking, in the least. It feels very heartfelt. It feels honest. It feels very much like, the guy feels like he was cheated. That something just wasn't going right, and something wasn't, something wasn't going right. Something wasn't the way he intended. He pictured the way he thought things should happen, and nobody understood what was going on. Nobody around him understood what was going on. None of the other employees, nobody else at Rooster Teeth. Apparently, this was something that was just, the upper management, people who were running the show were trying to control things in such a way as to oust Shane and what he believed to be Monty's vision, and they were telling the other Rooster Teeth employees basically a whole bunch of hooey about what was making RWBY so good. And personally, I can relate to the experience because it reminds me of things that I've experienced. This is like the typical experience you can expect to have if you ever encounter a sociopath. If you ever encounter a sociopath and they screw with you, you're going to feel isolated, right? You're going to feel like you got screwed and nobody else knows it. As far as everybody else is concerned, every mutual friend that you have, they're going to think that everything's fine and that you are crazy, that there's something wrong with you for decrying them, for being against this other person who apparently cheated you. It feels totally... You feel so isolated, right? And from that perspective, I can so easily relate to Shane, because what he's describing is exactly that. He's describing a situation where he's totally isolated. He's the only one who seems to be genuinely honest and concerned with Monty's vision, and everybody else doesn't understand what's actually going on, right? And the only people who do, are actively trying to sabotage Monty's image. The way he describes the thing in his letter is that people in Rooster Teeth were legitimately going out of their way to sabotage Monty's image because of some reason. We don't know why. Maybe they wanted things to be more efficient. Maybe, they wanted to do things their way. They thought their way was better. Maybe they were just greedy. Who knows? Maybe they had legitimate reasons. I don't know. I can't tell. It's impossible to tell. Of course, I don't know the other half of the story. I'm sure Rooster Teeth has their own thing to say. But I'm inclined to believe certain aspects of Shane's story because they just ring true. Like, he describes the way in which he was fired. It was a very dishonest way. They basically tricked him to get him out of the room so that then they can go into the room and start archiving the hard drives without telling him. Like, well, it's just, it's such an unnecessary point of manipulation. Like, they literally needed to get him out of the room just to do that. Like, why not just tell the guy when he's in the room? Like, it's like, all right, you're sorry, Shane, you're fired. But, you know, can we still archive? We need to archive your hard drives first. And it's like, you can just say that to him. Why do you need to lie about it? To remove the hard drives when he's not there. That whole thing just feels so unnecessary, needlessly manipulative. Upon that, the reason they fire him is complete bullshit, based on what it sounds like, because this guy apparently worked with Monty, which would have been working fine. Although maybe there were legitimate problems with his performance, with the divorce and all that stuff. I don't know. I don't really want to speculate on that stuff. But the point is, he got screwed. He can't even use Rooster Teeth as like a reference anymore. He's out of a job, out of a life, and I would not want to be in his shoes. So truly, genuinely, my heart goes out to the guy. See, this is why you should have voted for Bernie Sanders, you idiots. I'm gonna get politics into this shit, but yeah. I of course want to talk about what I of course want to talk about what this letter actually means for RWBY going into the future, and what this says about what we've already seen. Personally, if what he describes is accurate in the letter, then I am 100% on his side, because the way, perhaps there were legitimate performance problems with the guy, and also I'm actually not sure, like, if you get a divorce, isn't there supposed to be some sort of, like, maternity leave or something? Like, some sort of, like, his best friend dies and he like, I don't know, it just feels like things like that should be very, that there should be some sort of relief from work in situations like that. But whatever, I don't know. Disgusting. What Rooster Teeth did was disgusting for several reasons. Number one is what they didn't seem to make any sense. It was needlessly dishonest, as the letter describes, and it was honestly, ultimately, a disservice to both Monty and RWBY. And what RWBY was supposed to be, and what RWBY could have been. And the proof is in the pudding. Every criticism that I had for Volume 3, all the stuff that we talked about and all those other videos in the review, all of it, it's like, I hate to be right, but all of it was, in fact, built upon things actually happening behind the scenes responsible for the changes, right? Like, there's a reason Pyrrha's death felt so wrong to so many people. It's because it was supposed to be completely different. Or, not completely different, but as, let me just read a quote here. No longer did John witness and cause Pyrrha's death, triggering a major character growth moment for him. No longer did we see Pyrrha as the perfect warrior who could actually stand a chance against Cinder, who's now so OP it's almost a joke. So, John was supposed to be in the scene. And if you recall, if you watched my other videos on this thing, you'll know that, this is something that was pointed out. This is something that Gio pointed out. That scene made no sense. It made absolutely no sense, everything that went down. And they still haven't heard a single good argument justifying it besides pointless fanboys trying to, throw apologia in my face about, like, Rooster Teeth said this. No. There was nothing justifying Pyrrha going up to that tower, right? If she died to protect Jean, then that would have made infinitely more sense. It would have made infinitely more sense. It's a little cliche, it's a little lame, I suppose. It's a little overdone, maybe. It's also a missed opportunity, I'd say, because Pyrrha was a strong enough character that she didn't even need to die. They could have had a whole story arc for her that could have kept going and turned into something, which would have been good. Honestly, it just didn't make sense from perspective to kill off, like, one of, objectively, one of the more interesting arcs, the most interesting arc that was going on in the show, because everything else, at least a lot of the other characters, were so damn boring. So the fact that they got rid of that just didn't make much sense, right? But on top of that, the way they did it didn't make any sense. They didn't earn that scene. They didn't earn the right to make that scene go down that way. It didn't scream heroism. It didn't scream sacrifice. It screamed stupidity and undeservingness. That's what that scene was about. If John had been there and she was trying to protect John, that would have sold it. It was completely. I still wouldn't like it. I would have still said that this is a missed opportunity, and this is a genuinely, perhaps a flawed thing that Monty has done. And however, I would have said that there is a way to come back from this if this turns into something very good later on. The way they did it made no sense because Jean was nowhere near the scene, right? Pyrrha's death had more of an impact on RWBY than it did on Jean. More of an impact on RWBY, which is saying something because RWBY's reaction was 1 second long. She sniffled and cried for a little second, and then everybody forgets about Pyrrha from now until forever. And yes, yes, I know a month passed, during that interval, in those final few scenes. That's not the point. The point is, we didn't get to see a reaction because they didn't want to show us a reaction. They should have shown us a reaction. The scene was more about what was happening with those characters than what the fuck than RWBY's stupid Silver Eye thing. Who gives a shit about that? A main character just died. One of the only interesting characters in the show just died. And you're going to tell me that Silver Eyes, those are important. Salem, that's important. I've already talked about that. I'm not going to go into all the details again. But the point is, from what it sounds like, this scene would have been infinitely better had they just used Monty's original plan, which is what we guessed. This is what we were saying, that Monty probably had a completely different idea for how this thing would go down. They ended up removing the one thing in the scene that made it make more sense. They tried to be edgy, because I can see Miles just like looking at the idea and being like, well, Pyrrha dying to protect Jean, that's so cliche, let's get rid of that and be more edgy. They went for edginess over making sense. And honestly, if you ever have a choice as a writer between doing something that makes sense and doing something edgy, you do the thing that makes sense. Otherwise, you're doing edginess for edginess' sake, which is never, if ever, good. So yeah, it's it ended up being an insult to the character and to the show and to Monty's vision. No surprise. Again, if he's not making it up, but I could see him not making it up. That's the interesting thing. Why would he make this up? What does he have to gain? Is he just mad that Rooster Teeth hired him? Is he just crazy? I guess that's something they would say, that he's exaggerating, that he's crazy. But yeah, there it is. Like, what they had, what Monty seemed to have was a lot better. And, this whole thing is exactly like Mass Effect 3. When Mass Effect 3 came out, everyone was in an uproar. It was a huge debacle, and it turned out that the reason why was EA was getting their hooks into BioWare and corrupting that process. Moreover, the writers, the head writer, was different than the guy who wrote the first two games, the head writer for Mass Effect 1 and 2. And so the whole thing ended up being completely different. And just that evidence alone, historically, should be enough to justify that you don't want to merge the visions of two different authors. Two different authors who have completely different, who aren't even on the same wavelength, who aren't trying to be on the same wavelength, who have their own separate ideas. Like, it's interesting, Shane describes Rooster Teeth as if they didn't even like Monty or the way he did things, that they wanted to do their own thing pretty much, and they were trying to oust him. They pretended to like him to his face, which just feels, I don't know how much of that he's making up, but that feels just so horrible, right? Because just imagine being Monty in that situation, and given the fact that this guy basically created the animation department in Rooster Teeth to begin with, and also it's just what was the problem with following things, with following Monty's image? What was the problem with that? It would have been better. It would have been legitimately better. And as Shane describes it, his idea to make it better would have been to include Monty's wife, who actually knew the story, who was the next closest person to knowing the story past Monty, but they alienated her, and they didn't want to follow the workflow or whatever. So, I mean, it's sad. It's tragic. It's a very typical corporate thing. This is what you can expect from corporatism, you know. I'm sure I'm not going to take politics out of this, because politics is related to this. This is the corporate politics that worst case scenario, and that Rooster Teeth did this for no good reason, that they just wanted control. I don't know. Then it's literally a symptom of corporate politics in play. And corporate politics and the psychology of corporate politics is something I'm deeply critical of for precisely these reasons. You know, the psychology of it, the psychology of capitalism, is anti-artistic. It destroys art. It rapes art. It doesn't care about art. It tries to reduce art down to a formula that you can, crunch and repeat to sell as many units of the damn thing. Whereas art is about vision, and it's something that's completely invisible to anyone who isn't trying to relate to the guy who has the vision. Like, it's a very introspective process. You don't just reduce it to a formula. This is why, capitalism sucks. Sorry, I'm not gonna take politics out of this. People think like, oh, you should take politics out of your opinions on things. No, fuck that. It's all related. It's all related. To understand part of this, you have to understand all of it. Unfortunately, though, I can only give you part of it at a time. But the politics of this situation and the psychology of capitalism and all that shit, it's all interrelated. Shane, to his credit, says in the letter, that maybe Rooster Teeth's just trying to make money, which is perfectly okay. No, Shane. That's your problem. That's not okay. You are socially conditioned to believe that that's okay. That's not actually okay. That right there, that psychology behind that instinct is the reason why it gets fucked up like this in the first place. Maybe one might say, well, being self-interested makes you cost-conscious or whatever. But you could be cost-conscious without being self-interested. What being self-interested definitely makes you is benefit unconscious. It makes you unconscious to the vision that would actually make this art as best as it could possibly be. Take that for what it is. If you don't agree with me on the politics, then whatever. You can comment, or you can just ignore that aspect of it. But the point is, I think it's a related issue. Anyway, getting back to the meat of this thing. Monty, I came to a realization with this, was that everything we saw in animation before was pretty much due to Monty. And the interesting thing is, when I talked about RWBY before, when I talked about RWBY back in Volumes 1 and 2, I was pointing out how RWBY wasn't really an anime. It's unfair to consider it an anime because it looks like an anime on the surface, but behind the scenes it feels very much like something else. It feels very it felt very Rooster Teeth. That's what I called it. It feels like very dynamic, sort of Rooster Teeth styled action, which at the time I called Rooster Teeth styled action, but at this point I will call it Monty styled action because it was really Monty who was doing it, not Rooster Teeth. Who apparently they weren't even for his way of doing things. And just to reiterate, Monty-styled action was his emphasis on long shots with few cuts, wide shots that show you how both of the characters in the fight are moving, and most of all, every single fight felt very It felt real, and I don't know how else to say that. It felt like you're looking at this fight take place within this world. Whereas in anime, it's more about the image. It's more about how shiny it all is. That's what anime is a lot of the times to me. The action in anime is 2D, and a lot of the time it feels lame. With Rooster Teeth, you actually see how characters are moving and the differences with how they're moving and how they're playing to their strength and how they're playing to their weaknesses. And the interesting thing is, this is totally coincides with the way that Shane describes Monty's workflow, is that Monty did not have pre-scripted ideas of how a fight would go. They would just get into the studio, and they would sit down, and they would think, all right, you have this character and this character fighting, how is this going to go? How are they going to use their abilities? They know the character's abilities, and then they just sort of spontaneously act it out. And that makes so much sense in the sense of making the fight look good and realistic. You know, it makes so much sense because you don't have this, like, pre-scripted, artificial idea of what it's going to go like. It looks and feels real because it effectively is. Because you're sitting there and you're just letting the fight happen, right? So the fact that this was what Monty was doing, according to Shane, it makes a lot of sense to me. It makes sense why those earlier action scenes that we see in Red vs. Blue and in RWBY felt so good. And felt so different from anything you've seen in, like, anime, is because they didn't feel shiny or sparkly for the sake of being like that. They felt realistic. There were wide shots, long shots, and you could tell not just, like, what the characters... You could tell the different styles of combat, pretty much. Different characters played to their strengths and their weaknesses. You know, there's huge differences between how Carolina fights versus how Texas fights in Red vs. Blue. And there's huge differences between how Weiss fights versus Blake. And not just talking about their weapon, but their the way they move, the way they do things, you know, the way they go about the situation. It was very interesting, and there's just a lot of nuance there. This is what I kept talking about in the trailers and stuff, and this is what Monty did, apparently. This whole thing, the nuances of the combat were entirely due to Monty. This is his artistic contribution to society, was these Monty shots, these long shots where we could see the difference in combat. Like, go back to Season 9 of Red vs. Blue. There's, like, a shot on the freeway that's, like, 2 or 3 minutes long. It's completely uncut. It's a 2 or 3 minute long shot that tracks Maine and Carolina as they're fighting along those cars. We see nothing like that ever since, pretty much. Ever since, like, after Season 10, the quality of the action, well, let's just say that it changes. It goes back to sort of a more Hollywood style where you have shorter shots, you have more jump cuts, and you have more close-ups. And, you know, which is what you have in Hollywood. Things have more, like, shaky cam. Monty made things, you know, he made these performances. What we're getting now, and what we were getting in Red vs. Blue later on, and what we were getting in RWBY, actually, I talked about this during the review with fans, was the action looked more Hollywood-esque. It looked less... Not just like less effort was put into it. It felt less inspired. It felt less natural. And part of that, I theorized, was because they tried to squeeze in very many action sequences within one volume. Volume 3 had this shit ton of fights. But as it turns out, it could just be because Monty wasn't involved. They were doing things a different way, a different work paradigm. Monty wasn't involved, so the assets he had developed were relatively unused. And so it didn't have the same feel. And it really didn't have the same feel. A lot of the fights in the arena, like the fight in the first season, in the first episode of Volume 3, the fight with Team the Team Coco, or the chick with the Gatling gun, that fight didn't feel as good. It didn't have the same feel as things previously in Volumes 1 and 2, and things in Red vs. Blue, as Seasons 8 through 10. So, I mean, I don't know if I'm the only one who's noticed this, but you can so easily tell the difference between something Monty played a hand in now and something he didn't, right? And if you go to if you go and watch the seasons that Monty wasn't really involved in as an animator because, well, he was dead, you will see that they just don't feel the same. They aren't as good. And that's kind of sad, you know? It's kind of sad that they didn't even try. Like, Shane apparently had... Maybe he didn't have all of Monty's talent, but he had figured out the method. If they could have perhaps salvaged some of that, you know, he was the next best thing to Monty within, you know, Rooster Teeth. But they didn't want to do things Monty's way for some reason. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. What they had was better. The quality of the fights was better. So I'm going to call those, like, super long shots, super long wide shots without jump cuts, Monty shots. And yeah, I mean, I know that some of those were in Volume 3. There's, like, that shot in the courtyard like the Avengers style shot. But that, first of all, that one's very different because it felt very forced. Like they were panning through all the characters. You know, whereas what Monty did, he didn't, like the Monty shots I'm talking about, they weren't just there for the sake of being there. Like they were actually used they were used very explicitly to demonstrate how the characters in the fight were doing, how the different characters in the fight were fighting, right? Like just take a look at like how Maine and Carolina fight on the freeway. It wasn't just long shot for the sake of being long. It was like the camera pans from Maine to Carolina in like the right moments to show us what they're actually doing. It's just it feels entirely different, you know. It feels spontaneous. It feels inspired, you know. I don't know. Just the level of animation quality. It's, if what Shane is saying is correct, then what we're gonna see in volumes 4 is a general, not necessarily a drop, but it's going to become more Hollywood-esque. The style of animation is going to become more shiny, you know, it's going to become more sparkly, but there's going to be tons of jump cuts, and it's going to be tons of, like, close-ups. It's not going to look as good, basically. Unless they really go out of their way to make it look good. Because it's probably harder to make it look good with the way that they're doing it now. I don't know. Yeah. Suffice to say is it's just it's really shaken my faith in Rooster Teeth. Not that I exactly had faith. I was never really a Rooster Teeth fanboy. But I noticed that things like this happen with them very often. They very often they do something that alienates a chunk of the fan base. Like Achievement Hunter will do something, and half the people will dislike the video and be like, "Oh, I don't like this," and then the other half are like, you know, either they don't care or they're like Rooster Teeth fanboys that are going to upvote everything. And this is like another one of those situations. And the fanboys are flooding in. They don't want Rooster Teeth criticized. I think Rooster Teeth needs to be criticized, honestly, especially after stuff like this, because they, you know, I think the fact that they're the cool guys on the internet and get all this like attention because they're the cool guys on the internet that play games and give us action shows and shit, has given them a free pass on much too many things. If it's true what Shane is saying, then there's going to be more things to come where they will screw something up, basically. You know, there will be errors to come. There will be mistakes to come. We're going to see in RWBY Volume 4, we're going to see in future things that they create either a drop in quality or just you will sense the corporatization of what it is that they're trying to do. And that's what this feels like a lot. Like everything has just become corporate now and manipulative, and it's become about selling the team this positive morale message. Like, yeah, you go animators, you guys are good, you guys are adding to RWBY, it's great, you guys are great. When in reality, it could just be all based on some sort of lie, or because they're trying to make money, and they own the IP, and so they just don't give a shit about Monty's vision. Yeah. Sorry, like I wanted to be constructive in this thing because I almost, if I'm not constructive here, I feel like I'm just taking advantage of a tragedy. Right? This is a tragedy for Shane, in the very least. It's a double tragedy. It's a tragedy for Monty, who died, his wife, and Shane, whose life was at least partially ruined by all this. It's kind of like an episode of Game of Thrones that those two guys, they just had their whole like hopes and dreams shattered by, you know, various errors and mistakes and horror. So optimistically, I don't know what game Rooster Teeth was playing, but if anything, what this should be to fans is a wake-up call to try and be less fanboyish, maybe, to try and really, I don't know, like hold them accountable, maybe, for the mistakes that they make. Basically, don't act like they're perfect in everything that they do. You know, don't act like there's nothing wrong with RWBY, or that there's nothing wrong with what happened here. There's just too many coincidences at this point within them coming out with Volume 3, and the shitstorm that was the fucking Volume 3 ending, and then this letter to pass it all off as just a coincidence. As, oh, Rooster Teeth, they just screwed up, they don't know what they're doing, they're just silly and stupid. No. This feels very malign. This feels like there's enough red flags at this point to say, like, okay, somebody's intentionally doing something for bad reasons, and this is what we're getting. So, I might sound melodramatic, but my point is, it's like, if you care about the product, if you're a fan and you care about the product, then don't be a fanboy, because there are noticeable ways in which the product could be better, you know, if certain people within the production process just have different intentions. You know, if they're not self-interested, if they're not interested to, you know, have control or do the thing their way because their way is better for no good reason. Like, they need to actually... art is done through, like, communal cooperation and humility, right? That is, like, the psychology of humility and cooperation is the perfect breeding ground for the creative, productive, artistic process. That is the environment in which you're going to get a truly... Like, it has to be an environment of passion and love, basically, to get the perfect work, right? And if it's anything less than that, then it's going to be less than perfect. And not subjectively less than perfect. It will be objectively less than perfect. And as somebody who cares about the art, you know, you have to hold the people making the art accountable to make sure that they are in that space, in that environment. To make sure that they're doing the best that they can, and that it is an environment of passion, it is an environment of humility, it is an environment of love, and it's not all that other capitalistic corporate shit. So what does RWBY look like in the future? Well, it's one of two ways. It could go one of two ways that I see. It could either be good, and I don't think it could ever be great. I think at most, the most this thing could hope to aspire to is good at this point. And good in the sense that it could be good, but it won't look anything like what Monty had originally envisioned, right? That is a reasonable possibility at this point. Right? What might end up happening is Miles and Carey will try to merge their ideas and their story into what Monty had planned out, and artistically, it's gonna be shaky. Right, and the faster they can get through the transition so that they could just start giving us their own ideas, the better. And that's actually probably what Volume 3 was that transition. It was us transitioning from Monty's story into Carey and Miles' story, only it was a much too violent one, and I agree with Shane wholeheartedly when he said it was too fast. It was way too fast. You know, I was actually talking with a friend about how it's like, yeah, they could have changed the tone, you know, if they did it mildly and periodically and elegantly. You know, it has to be elegant, but they didn't do it elegantly. It's like they ripped off the Band-Aid. Well, it's not even ripping off the Band-Aid. It's more like they, you know, they hit the story with a hammer and flattened it to put it into the shape that they wanted it to be in. That's what Volume 3 was actually like. So, you know, on the plus side of that, it means that hopefully it won't have any violent, flattening, blunt, like, tonal shifts or thematic shifts in the future. Hopefully. That shouldn't happen again. But even then, I think the most it could ever aspire to be is good. Because what's ultimately at work here is we have Monty's plans, all the things he wrote down or that he thought of that people knew about, and we're gonna have different writers integrate that with their vision. And just knowing that they were on different wavelengths before this thing happened, that is not gonna go spectacularly. It's not. That's why I say it can't ever be great. It can't even be amazing. The most it could ever aspire to be is good. And if it is going to be good, it will be good in that sense that once RWBY is done and you go back and watch it, you're going to be like, skip the first 2 volumes and then just go straight to volume 3. Or skip the first 3 volumes and start from volume 4. That is how you're going to sell this thing to people. It might not make total sense if you did that, but that's what it's going to feel like. Like when you tell people about the show, you're going to be like, the first 2 volumes were a little but then it got its shit together by volume 3 or 4. That is how it's going to look like after when the whole thing is done. Because that is going to be the point when the old showrunners, everything that the old showrunner was making happen is going to be out of the way. So that is what we're effectively looking at. It could still be a good story. It just won't look anything like what Monty had envisioned. It'll be an entirely different thing with its own rules that won't. Basically, it will have borrowed and stolen from Monty's ideas and Monty's IP, and created and done its own thing. And is that good? If it's good, then I suppose that's okay. It feels a little wretched, because it's like stealing someone's idea, But if it's ultimately good, then we should give it a pass. But there's also the chance that it could just be terrible. That's the other option. It's either going to be good, passable, but as Miles' image, not Monty's image, or it's going to be completely terrible, because what's going to happen is Miles and Carrie are going to try to integrate, fuse, merge their vision with Monty's image, and it's going to create a bunch of crap. Because there's no way to merge... It's hard to merge the visions of 2 different people in an elegant way. So that could end up happening as well. Yeah. That would be... That's also likely. I mean, I guess we'll end up... We'll go and we'll see with what happens in Volume 4. It's just... It's sad. Let's just look at it that way. It's very sad. They could have quite easily stuck to Monty's vision as closely as they could have. Realized and trusted Monty as like the genius that he was. I suppose he's a genius. And then just done that. And that would have probably made a better product. Probably. We won't ever know. But it's just... I don't know. This whole thing, it's just... It's hard not to lay some of the blame at their feet. Because ultimately I feel like a lot of this was up to them to make better. And they decided not to do that. So yeah, I'm on Team Shane, and my heart goes out to him, and Sheena, and all that, and, Monty, rest in peace, but, yeah, I think it's... My concern is not that my concern is not that Monty would be turning in his grave if he knew people were fighting over his legacy. My concern is what makes the best product. That's it. That's the only thing I care about here. Well, that's not the only thing I care about, but that is one of the things I care about. Right? What makes the best product? And whether or not this is what Monty would have wanted, what he definitely would have wanted, is the best product. And that's not what we're getting. Just objectively, that's not what we're going to get. That's the reality of this situation. I almost controversially feel like in situations like this, if you don't want to continue making the story the way it was intended to be told, you should just not tell it at all. You should either let the people who could tell the story tell it, or just straight up not tell it. Just scrap the whole thing and do something else. Come up with your own ideas. Because that would be more honest, I suppose. In an ideal world, that's how this would have gone down. But in capitalist, corporatist America, we take what we can get. Yeah. Cheers. And by all means, let me know what your thoughts are. And if there's hope, for a better RWBY, a better, representation of Monty's legacy, then I'd want to hear it. And to Shane Newville, good luck, and I'm sorry for what happened. And to Rooster Teeth, yeah, sorry. You guys could do better. I hope. I think. Take that for what it is. Cheers.